I had no knowledge of anything. I have no knowledge of any wrongdoing of any. Yeah, I'm very comfortable saying that. I'm very comfortable saying that nobody did it. As far as I know, I don't know everything. I also understand that I was in the locker room preparing for a game. I don't know what happened over the course of the process with the footballs. I was preparing for my own job and doing what I needed to do.
And I want to say this to the television audience. I made my mistakes, but in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. And in all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I could say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
Are you confident that in the end, that fans will be able to say, I have no doubt about Tom Brady, that he's on the up and up?
Well, I think, look, everybody's entitled to an opinion, and, when you play for one NFL team, there's 31 other NFL teams out there, and they're probably not much of a fan of you. I mean, if people want to feel whatever they feel, that's it. I have no problem with that. They're certainly entitled to those beliefs and those feelings. I realize it's not about me. Not a lot of people know who I am and know what I'm about, and the people that do, they do know what I'm about and what I stand for.
Different chapters of Deflategate. We heard Tom Brady going way back to pre-Super Bowl. Tricky Dick, Richard Nixon, a one-time Orlando speech, by the way, reminding us that he's not a crook. Later would resign the office of president. And then Bob Costas and Tom Brady, that interview that aired on Super Bowl Sunday. Another chapter today. Is it the concluding one? To be determined. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell has upheld the 4-game suspension imposed on Tom Brady for his role in deflating game footballs. We're Sports Talk, 1080 The Team, Orlando's Tuck and O'Neill. With Mike Tuck, I'm Jerry O'Neill. We'll talk more about that from one who really is, I believe, partially responsible maybe for letting the world know that this is going to be the result, or was going to be. Steve Del Vecchio joins us from Larry Brown Sports, lead writer there. Steve, good to have you on with us. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Doing fine. Are you surprised at all at this latest result now that the commissioner upholds Tom Brady's appeal?
I'm very surprised because, obviously the new piece of information is, the most relevant, that he supposedly destroyed his cell phone. I mean, if people had known that, that he had done that a few months ago, I think, the predictions for how things were going to shake out would have been much different. Especially, I know that would have been the case for myself. I kind of speculated all along that when, Robert Kraft accepted the team's punishment a while back, that he must have had some sort of handshake agreement with Roger Goodell. I was thinking maybe, if not overturned, maybe they would, at least reduce it to a game or two. And then, maybe they were talking the past couple days about settlement. I was thinking maybe there'd be some sort of settlement where, Brady misses a game, but the NFL still leaves it open that he might not have done anything wrong, but he's just accepting the game to, put everything behind and go along with the process. But obviously this new piece of information is huge, and it kind of, adds an entirely different element. But, I don't think it's over. They already said Brady's going to go to court, and, we'll see where it goes from there.
Do you believe still Tom Brady's going to take this thing to court and battle it to the death?
It sounds like it. That's the reports that are floating out there. The only thing that people, some people don't understand is that a court of law is far different from the way the NFL operates with things. I think, if Brady does take it to court, which it sounds like he's going to, I don't think his case will be as much about whether or not he's innocent as it will be about precedent. It's kind of an unprecedented case. The NFL doesn't have, specific guidelines for how long people should be suspended for, rule violations, I guess. It says the base rule for tampering with game balls is $50,000. Obviously, that's a base fine, so they reserve the right to go over that. But, there's a couple different cases where, like Brett Favre a few years ago, he didn't turn over his cell phone when he had that little scandal with Jen Sturger. And that wasn't an integrity of the game issue, but I think that these are the types of things that Brady's legal team is going to try to argue just to prove that, Goodell has no basis and he's just kind of flying by the seat of his pants. And even if he can't prove that he's innocent, I think he's going to try to get at least some of those games wiped away.
To me, Tom Brady began this quest in an attempt to protect his image. He felt as though admitting guilt would hurt his image in the long run. I feel as though to this point in the journey, he's actually worsened his image in an attempt to protect it by having this out here the way he has now. And especially with the cell phone news, that only makes, him seem more guilty and more petty over this entire thing.
I agree completely. I mean, if his goal from the start was to protect his public image and try to clear his name and, leave at least some doubt on either side, where people could say, oh, maybe it's, the NFL overreacting, I think he failed at that. And this is the biggest piece of news. I mean, this makes all the difference in the world. I mean, he said that in the ruling, Brady said that he always destroys his cell phones, which isn't that hard to believe for a celebrity, but the timing is awful. The NFL said he didn't destroy his old cell phone, the one that he used before Deflategate. I mean, last November, they said they were able to look at that cell phone, so he didn't destroy that one, so that's inconsistent. And then they said he started using a new cell phone on March 6th of this year, which is the day that Ted Wells was set to investigate him. So obviously it's a terrible look all around. I'm surprised. There's a lot of things that surprise me, and I haven't completely wrapped my brain around it yet. The one thing that surprises me is that he would be that dumb to destroy the phone. First of all, if he's trying not to look guilty, that's a terrible move. Second of all, if this thing goes to federal court, I think the only way he has a chance of, having a little bit of leniency on his side is if, the court, I mean, they can still look at his phone records, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Phone records aren't gone when you destroy a cell phone. So that's the part that I don't understand about it. By destroying his phone, the NFL maybe can't directly look at anything, but if it came down to it and they needed to summon the phone companies or whomever, they could still find the record. So I just don't get what the motive would be there unless he panicked. But even still, I mean, that wouldn't be characteristic of Brady.
Years ago, whether you agree with my conclusions or not, I don't know, Steve. When Michael Jordan, all these many years ago, left NBA basketball, I felt it was because so much had gone on in his life. His father was even murdered in the offseason, and he couldn't call a timeout to life. He might have come back to basketball, I felt, if he could just call a timeout and walk away, clear his head, maybe have another month, but he couldn't. The calendar, the day continued to move. And I feel this way about Tom Brady. Tom Brady was in a situation, what I gather is that if he could have either called a timeout, or it tells me how limited other people had on influencing some of his decisions going back all these months, even as it regards being party to a press conference the days, I think, that were right before they headed out to the desert to go play the Super Bowl. He just made a number of mistakes. Even the interview with Bob Costas that aired on Super Bowl Sunday, he was not doing himself any favors.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, the only thing with that people, I think, tend to forget is that I'm sure the main concern with the Patriots before the Super Bowl, I mean, it's easy to look back now, and even I've said it, and I agree that he's made all of this so much worse by just deny. If he had come out and said, I did do it, I told them I liked the balls a little bit under, didn't realize it was such a huge rule violation, didn't know it would be such a big deal, there'd probably be a little bit more sympathy for him. But I think people overlook the fact that there was probably, I mean, I don't know how much concern, but there had to have been some level of concern that what if, Roger Goodell, who has a reputation for, just slapping punishments on people without precedent and just by the seat of his pants, what if he suspended him for the Super Bowl? So I think that was the biggest issue, the biggest concern at the time, and I think that's what's pretty much resulted in this getting out of control, is that they only had one choice, and they were probably worried about the actual consequences for the Super Bowl. And then once they come out and say, he didn't do it, and deny everything, and Belichick's crazy press conference, Brady's nervous press conference, once they, dipped into that, dipped their toes in that water, so to speak, they couldn't get out. I mean, they kind of had to roll with it. Now it's just kind of gotten out of control.
I totally agree with you that the timing was so unique, and there would have been pressure. Good Lord, there were people calling on that. In this world of social media and in the world of bloggers, et cetera, at least a segment of those that were suggesting after the Super Bowl that they vacate the Super Bowl championship. I think you're right. I think Tom Brady felt individual pressure that if I admit to some of this, the wave of criticism and the loud, chorus of people who get on my back, whether they're sports fans or whether they're sports reporters or not, will have influence on this commissioner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the commissioner says himself, the integrity of the game, the integrity of the game. Well, if Brady came out and admitted, I mean, he had to inject as much doubt as he possibly could. If he came out and admitted, yes, I did cheat, I didn't think it was a big deal, I'm sorry, that'd be one thing, for his future legacy. Maybe we wouldn't be looking back on it, but like you said, there would have been pressure, especially since the Patriots. They don't really have many fans outside of New England. People would have said, well, if he cheated and he openly admitted he cheated, he can't play in the Super Bowl. So I think that was concern number one. And now here we are after that. It just spiraled one thing after the other. It seems, but to your point, it seems like if they could have called the timeout, it would have been better. The timing was awful. But even now, when after the fact, it seems like one hand doesn't know what the other's doing. There was the bizarre statement from Kraft that, rebutted the Wells report that just had the worst excuse ever, the deflator excuse. And it seems like one hand, for all the money that they have and all the lawyers that they must have, you would think that they would be able to get on the same page, but it seems like one side doesn't know what the other's doing, which is the most stunning thing to me throughout the entire process.
I don't know what your take is on some of the other all-time greats in other sports that have been found guilty at one point or another of cheating in their careers, and the attachment of whatever stigma is toward them by the public versus individuals and their thoughts on it. But what is your takeaway on Brady, and does it have an effect on your opinion of him? Does it change at all? Your take on that?
My opinion, it changes very little. I mean, just the straight logistics of it. If you want to say that he's not a stand-up guy and, his image is kind of a sham and he's not as much of a clean-cut guy as people thought he was, I think that's probably fair. As far as the actual play on the field, I mean, the facts are the facts. We don't really know if the Patriots did this every game. They could have. We do know that the balls were properly inflated in the second half against the Colts when his numbers were significantly better, and the Patriots continued to put a beating on him. We know for an absolute fact that the balls were properly inflated in the Super Bowl because they were under lock and key for 2 weeks, and there was no way the league was going to let something like that happen again. So, I mean, I don't, from that perspective, I don't think that he benefited greatly to the point where he would have won less championships or won less if, he didn't tell somebody to tamper with the balls. But from an image standpoint, absolutely. I mean, it's always going to be an asterisk, so to speak, when you look back on it, 20 years from now. But at the same time, I think when people look back on it in 20 years and they say, oh, he's the guy that let a little bit of air out of football, supposedly, I think the actual crime itself will probably not be as severe as it has been over the past several months because it's been, the story. It's similar. I like to compare it to, the Broncos supposedly cheating the salary cap. Does anyone care now? Doesn't seem like it. I think it'll be, a similar situation of that when we're all kind of removed from it and can look back on it. But again, for his image, sure, I don't think he's, clean-cut Tom as much as everyone would have liked to think.
It's just a guess, like it is for an athlete that's found to have used PEDs. How long have they used? We don't want to believe them, whatever they decide to tell us. Sometimes it was just an accident, we hear. With Brady, what do you think? Is this a one-time thing? Is this something you think he's been doing for the bulk of his career?
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't. There's so much information out there that it's hard to settle on an opinion. The one thing I've looked at, just trying to play devil's advocate because everybody else has pinned him for being guilty. I kind of compare it to a major corporation. If somebody your boss tells you to have something on their desk by Monday, they probably don't care how you get there. They just say, I'm not going to give you the details of it. Have it on my desk by Monday. If you look at some of those text messages, in the Wells report, it seems like Brady's always, on those guys' backs about, the NFL overinflated the balls tonight. Everybody kind of ignored that they said in one game against the Jets the balls were at 16 PSI, and he was upset about it. I think that he just, told those guys the balls were too firm. We need to get them, we need to get them a little bit softer. I don't care how you do it. I refuse to believe that he had a direct hand in any of it. As for how long it's been going on, I'm not sure. You look at the Aaron Rodgers thing where he said, we like to, submit the balls over and see if the refs catch it and let any air out of them because Rodgers likes to firm the ball. Well, I don't know if that's the type of thing that Brady and company were doing for a while, or if they were always, going into the bathroom, I think that would be a challenging thing to do on the road and wherever else. I mean, you have to assume that part of the Wells investigation was looking at surveillance footage from other stadiums. If not, I mean, that's not very thorough, but I've assumed that they would do something along those lines, and if they don't find anything, then you have to wonder when they would have done it. But, I mean, there's just no way of knowing. It's just, it's a gut feeling, like you said. My gut feeling is that it didn't really affect the play on the field. As for how long it's been going, I mean, I really don't know. It's a lot to take in.
We'll leave it at that. We very much appreciate your visit today. We'll continue to enjoy your work. Others who contribute to LarryBrownSports.com. Steve, thanks for the visit with us today.
Yeah, anytime. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Steve Del Vecchio from Larry Brown Sports, lead writer covering NFL stories, top story there at Larry Brown Sports.